Okay, let's play some damn chess. Slut from China. Street whore. Street whore. Come on, you street whore from China. Come on, you fucking street whore. Come on, you fucking street whore. Play the goddamn video.
Walk through any American shopping mall in 1973, and you'd struggle to spot what we call obesity today. Photographs from that era reveal a startling truth. The average American was dramatically slimmer than their modern counterpart. This wasn't about gym memberships or diet trends. Something fundamentally different shaped how people ate, moved, and lived. The answer lies buried in Depression-era frugality, factory lunchrooms, and a culture that hadn't yet discovered the supermarket as entertainment. Look at a crowd photo from a 1970s baseball game, a high school graduation, or a department store on Saturday after 1970s baseball game, a high school
She's cute! They're cute! Oh, she's cute! She's cute! Let me touch her head. Boop!
School graduation, or a department store from a 1970s baseball game, a high school graduation, or a department store on Saturday afternoon. Notice the bodies. Not a single person would turn heads today for a department store on Saturday afternoon. Notice the photo from a 1970s baseball game, a high school graduation,
with a spit person,
or a department store on Saturday afternoon. Notice the bodies. Not a single person would turn heads today for being unusually thin. They were just normal. Now scroll forward. Today, 73% of American adults are overweight or obese. In 1975, that number stood at 15%. This isn't a lecture about willpower or virtue. It's about recognizing that something fundamental changed in just 50 years, and it wasn't human nature. The Second World War ended in 1945, but the Great Depression cast a longer shadow over American eating habits than rationing ever did in Britain. An entire generation grew up watching their parents agonize over wasted food, stretch ingredients impossibly thin, and treat sugar and butter as precious resources even when abundance returned. By the 1970s, those Depression children had become parents and grandparents themselves. They carried forward attitudes about waste, portion sizes, and the value of food that shaped household kitchens across the nation. My grandmother saved bacon grease in a coffee can on the stove. She washed and reused aluminum foil. She served small portions and expected you to ask if you wanted more, rather than heaping plates high and hoping for the best. This wasn't poverty. It was national character forged through scarcity. Throwing away leftovers felt almost criminal. Second helpings were questioned, not automatic. The concept of eating until you were stuffed contradicted everything they'd internalized about moderation and gratitude. The clean plate club mentality existed, certainly, but plate sizes were smaller and servings reflected actual hunger rather than perceived value. You finished what you were given because it was rude to waste food. But what you were given was reasonable.
No spit.
Food companies marketed toward this frugal mindset. Recipe booklets from Kraft and General Mills taught housewives to make it last and stretch your dollar, reinforcing Depression-era values. Even as supermarket shelves groaned with abundance, the psychology of scarcity persisted long after actual scarcity had disappeared. Here's where America's story diverges sharply from Britain's. By 1970, 83% of American households owned at least one car, compared to Britain's 52%. We'd built suburbs specifically designed around automobile ownership, sprawling developments where nothing was walkable by design. Yet somehow, children still walked. In 1970, approximately 90% of American children who lived within a mile of school walked or biked there unsupervised. Not because their parents were particularly health conscious, but because driving your kids to school wasn't yet normalized. Mom needed the car during the day for errands. Dad drove it to work. The school bus served rural kids and those living far away. Everyone else hoofed it, and within a mile meant something different then. A mile each way, twice a day, regardless of weather. That's 4 miles of walking daily, 5 days a week, without anyone calling it exercise. It was simply how you got to school. Neighborhoods were designed differently too. Sidewalks connected everything. Shortcuts through backyards and vacant lots created pedestrian networks that cars couldn't follow. Kids roamed freely within a several block radius, burning calories through sheer movement as they roamed freely within a several block radius. Burning calories through sheer movement as they designed differently too. Sidewalks connected everything. Shortcuts through backyards and vacant lots created pedestrian networks that cars couldn't follow. Kids roamed freely within a several block radius, burning calories through sheer movement as they visited friends, played pickup baseball, or explored construction sites. Adults drove everywhere, yes, but parking lots were smaller and farther from entrances. You'd park at the shopping center and walk between Kmart, the grocery store, and the drugstore. Suburban shopping didn't mean pulling up to each store's door and farther from entrances. You'd park at the shopping center and walk between Kmart, the grocery store, and the drugstore. Suburban shopping didn't mean pulling up to each store's door. It meant in the drugstore. Suburban shopping didn't mean pulling up to each store's door. It meant parking once and walking, often carrying packages that got progressively heavier. The accumulated movement throughout ordinary days created baseline activity that modern life has eliminated, not through walking as transportation necessarily, but through walking as an unavoidable component of suburban life before it was fully optimized for automotive convenience. When your grandmother shopped in 1950, she might have visited a dozen different shops: the butcher, the baker, the produce stand, the dairy, the fishmonger. By 1970, that was already ancient history. The supermarkets had conquered America, consolidating everything under one fluorescent lit roof. But 1970s supermarkets were different beasts from today's warehouse stores. A typical suburban supermarket carried about 8,000 products compared to over 50,000 in a modern superstore. The store itself might occupy 15,000 square feet instead of 50,000 or more. You could see from one end to the other. More importantly, the product mix favored ingredients over prepared foods. The frozen food section existed, but occupied maybe 3 chest freezers and a wall case. TV dinners were available, certainly. Swanson had pioneered them in 1953, but they represented convenience for busy nights or lazy Sundays, not the default meal option. The year 1970 marked a turning point. Convenience foods existed, but represented perhaps 10% of household food spending, compared to over 50% today. Frozen fish sticks, canned soup, boxed mac and cheese. These were supplements to real cooking, not replacements for it. Most of what filled your cart was raw ingredients requiring actual preparation. A whole chicken cost 39 cents per pound.
Wow.
Potatoes came
Look
in
at that chicken. Is that a head?
A whole chicken cost...
Is that the chicken's head?
39 cents per pound. Potatoes came in 10-pound bags, not plastic containers of pre-cut pieces. Vegetables were fresh or canned, not frozen with butter sauce included. The economics favored scratch cooking dramatically. A box of Hamburger Helper cost comparatively more than a pound of ground beef, an onion, A box of Hamburger Helper cost comparatively more than a pound of ground beef, an onion, and some rice, making the Helper nonsensical unless you were truly desperate for time. Shopping itself took longer and required more planning. Without barcodes, UPC codes weren't standardized until 1974, and adoption took years. Checkout meant the cashier manually keying every price while referring to posted lists and memory. This made impulse purchases less appealing and encouraged list-based shopping. In 1970, 64% of American families reported eating dinner together 6 or 7 nights per week, not because they were more virtuous, but because alternatives barely existed. Fast food had entered American culture. McDonald's was expanding rapidly, but remained genuinely occasional. A Big Mac cost 65 cents in 1970, when minimum wage was $1.60 per hour. That's 40% of an hour's wage for one sandwich. For a family of 4, McDonald's might cost $3 to $4, representing serious money that could buy groceries for 2 days. So mothers cooked. Teenage daughters learned through mandatory home economics classes and helping in the kitchen.
Oh, she mashed. Man, look at her spit arms with pit smell.
Boys picked up basics through osmosis, though gender roles limited their direct instruction. Cooking meant actual labor, peeling potatoes, trimming fat from meat, chopping onions, monitoring things on the stovetop. Making a meal from scratch required 45 to 60 minutes of active work, naturally limiting how much you'd prepare, because making more meant more effort. Recipe cards and cookbooks from this era reveal portion expectations dramatically smaller than today. A standard pound cake recipe served 10 to 12 people. Casseroles fed a family of 4 across 2 nights. Stretching ingredients was built into recipe design. The microwave oven existed by 1970, but remained expensive and rare. Only about 1% of American homes owned one, compared to 90% by 1997. Without microwaves, reheating leftovers required actual effort, encouraging people to eat fresh meals rather than grazing on reheated portions. Labor-intensive cooking created natural stopping points. When making more food meant more work, you made what you needed, not abundant excess. Americans consumed sugar, certainly, more than the British, in fact, but the economics and availability were different. A 5-pound bag of sugar cost about 59 cents in 1970, which sounds cheap until you calculate it as a percentage of household budgets. Adjusted for income, that sugar represented real money, making it something to use with consideration rather than abandon. Baking a cake for Sunday dinner meant consciously choosing to spend sugar rations on that use instead of something else. High fructose corn syrup didn't enter the American food supply until the mid-1970s and didn't become ubiquitous until the 1980s. Before HFCS, sweetening processed foods meant using cane sugar, which cost actual money. Food manufacturers used it sparingly because it impacted their bottom line. Soft drinks existed and were popular, but consumption averaged one 6.5-ounce serving every 4 days per person in 1970. Compared to one 20-ounce serving daily today. Soda was a treat or a weekend indulgence. Most households kept maybe a 6-pack in the refrigerator for special occasions. Children drank water from the garden hose, milk at meals, or Kool-Aid diluted so thin you could practically see through it. A mother making a pitcher of Kool-Aid used half the recommended sugar because making it sweeter meant going through sugar faster, which meant another item on the shopping list. Breakfast cereals contained sugar, but even kids' cereals had limits. Fruit Loops contained 13 grams of sugar in 1970, compared to 16 grams today. Portion sizes were smaller too. A bowl meant maybe a cup or cup and a half, not the mixing bowl portions that became normal. The food industry hadn't yet perfected the hyper-palatable combinations that would later dominate. Products weren't scientifically engineered to trigger dopamine responses and override satiety signals. Food was just food. Visit a vintage store and look at dinner plates from the 1970s. Notice how small they are. The standard American dinner plate measured 9 inches in diameter throughout most of the 20th century. By 2000, 12-inch plates had become normal, with some reaching 15 inches. This wasn't a minor change. A 12-inch plate has 78% more surface area than a 9-inch plate. When you fill a plate edge to edge, that's 78% more food, consumed automatically without conscious decision-making. Restaurant portions reflected these smaller expectations. A steakhouse might serve you an 8-ounce ribeye, which was considered a generous portion. Modern regular steaks run 12 to 16 ounces or more. Same with pasta. A serving of spaghetti meant about 1 cup cooked, not the heaping bowls that became standard. Even fast food portions were modest by current standards. The original McDonald's hamburger patty weighed 1.6 ounces. A normal order of fries weighed 2.4 ounces. Now that's a small, and a large is 5.9 ounces. A small Coca-Cola was 7 ounces. Today's small is 16 ounces.
Damn.
This happened so gradually that nobody noticed. Each increase seemed minor. Add an ounce here, increase the cup size there. Make the plate a bit bigger to look more impressive. Compound those small changes over 30 years, and you've completely transformed what normal looks like. Home cooking followed the same trajectory. Cookbooks from 1970 specified serving sizes that modern cooks would consider laughable. A whole chicken was specified to serve a family of 4 across 2 meals, roasted the first night, then leftovers made into chicken salad or soup. Seconds happened, certainly, but you had to ask. Food wasn't automatically piled high with the expectation of multiple servings. You got a proper portion, ate it, and if you were still hungry, you could request more. This small psychological barrier, having to ask rather than automatically taking, made a significant difference. The concept of constant eating throughout the day was virtually unknown in 1970s America. You ate breakfast, lunch, and dinner, with perhaps a small afternoon snack for children. Between-meal eating raised eyebrows and invoked warnings about spoiling your appetite. Kitchen cupboards didn't contain the vast arrays of chips, crackers, granola bars, and snack foods that would become standard. A pantry might have a box of saltines, maybe some Ritz crackers for cheese, and a package of Oreos carefully rationed out. That was it. Children received allowances measured in quarters and dimes, limiting candy store visits. A kid might buy a candy bar for 10 cents on Saturday. Choose carefully between a Hershey bar or a Three Musketeers, and make it last. These treats were events, not constant background consumption. School didn't feature vending machines or snack bars beyond the cafeteria lunch period. You ate lunch, and that was your food for the school day. No grabbing chips between classes, no energy drinks from the student lounge. Workplaces similarly lacked the snack infrastructure that would later become standard. Coffee breaks happened at set times, 10 a.m. and 2 p.m., with perhaps a donut or cookie. Grazing at your desk wasn't just uncommon, it was considered unprofessional and would be commented on. The 24-hour eating culture, where food is always available and consumption never stops, simply didn't exist. Stores closed at 6 p.m. or earlier. Restaurants closed after dinner service. If you wanted food at 11 p.m., you were probably out of luck unless you lived near a diner or drive-in. This limited accessibility naturally restricted consumption in ways modern 24-hour supermarkets, drive-thrus, and food delivery apps have completely eliminated. Manufacturing and heavy industry still employed millions of Americans in 1970, representing about 30% of all employment compared to less than 10% today. These weren't desk jobs. They demanded physical exertion for 8 or more hours daily. Auto plants, steel mills, textile factories, construction sites, warehouse operations. These sectors kept bodies in motion. Even lighter manufacturing involved standing, reaching, lifting, and repetitive movement that burned calories automatically. Office work, lifting, bodies in motion. Even lighter manufacturing involved standing, reaching, lifting, and repetitive movement
with your
that
long
burned
arms.
calories automatically. Office work existed, certainly, but remained more physical than today's email and spreadsheet routine. Filing meant walking to file rooms and reaching into cabinets. Delivering documents meant hand-carrying them between departments. Typewriters required actual force to operate. Making copies involved physical machines that needed attention. No one sat motionless for 8 hours staring at screens, because the technology didn't exist yet. You moved as part of working, whether you wanted to or not. Household chores demanded real physical effort, overwhelmingly performed by women. Washing machines existed, but were basic, requiring manual loading, performed by women. Washing machines existed, but were basic, requiring manual loading, performed by women. Washing machines existed, but were basic, requiring manual loading, monitoring, and often manual wringing. Dryers existed, but were less common, meaning many households still hung laundry outside. Vacuum cleaners were heavy, inefficient beasts requiring serious pushing and pulling across carpets. Cleaning meant scrubbing floors on hands and knees, beating rugs outside, hand-washing windows, polishing furniture with actual elbow grease, cooking from scratch, as discussed earlier, also represented significant physical activity. Standing at the stove, kneading bread dough, hand-mixing ingredients, carrying groceries home, maintaining a household meant genuine physical work. Even leisure activities involved more movement. Gardening was common, producing vegetables and flowers without power tools. Yard work meant push mowers, manual edgers, and raking without leaf blowers. Children played outside after school in games that required running, climbing, and jumping. Not sitting with devices. The ultra-processed foods that now dominate American diets barely existed. Ultras and raking without leaf blowers.
Is that a spit girl? With pit. With to make it girl spit. My forearm was longer than hers, I believe.
Hard work meant push mowers, manual edgers, and raking without leaf blowers. Children played outside after school in games that required running, climbing, and jumping, not sitting with devices. The ultra-processed foods that now dominate American diets barely existed in recognizable form during the 1970s. What processing did occur remained visible and understandable. Butter churned from cream, cheese aged from milk, bread baked from flour. Ingredient lists, where they existed, contained familiar items. A loaf of Wonder Bread listed enriched flour, water, sugar, yeast, salt, and a few vitamins. Modern bread might list 20-plus ingredients, including dough conditioners, emulsifiers, and preservatives with chemical names. Meat came in recognizable forms: chops, roasts, ground beef, whole chickens. The reformed and engineered meat products that would later dominate freezer sections were rare. You could identify what animal a piece of meat came from by looking at it. Frozen vegetables existed, but they were just vegetables. Frozen, not vegetable medleys with butter sauce and seasonings engineered for maximal palatability. If you wanted flavor, you added it yourself through cooking.
There's
engineered for maximal palatability. If you wanted...
There's the smelly Shelly. With pit. With spit.
Flavor, you added it yourself through cooking.
With pit.
Engineered for maximal palatability. If you wanted flavor, you...
There's the smelly Shelly.
Added it yourself through cooking. Food scientists hadn't yet perfected what the industry calls craveable qualities. That precise balance of salt, sugar, and fat that overrides natural fullness signals and keeps you eating past satiation. Doritos launched in 1966, representing one of the first scientifically engineered snack foods. But this approach hadn't yet conquered the food supply. Most meals still had natural stopping points, because the food itself wasn't designed to trigger compulsive overconsumption. This wasn't willpower. It was the absence of deliberately addictive food engineering that would characterize later decades. The rise of food science paralleled the obesity epidemic so closely, it's hard to view them as unrelated. As engineered foods designed to override satiety became ubiquitous, Americans began gaining weight despite no apparent change in personal character or self-control. Weight gain attracted direct comment in ways that would be considered inappropriate or even discriminatory today. Doctors bluntly told patients to lose weight without the careful language policing that modern medicine requires. Family members felt free to observe that you'd put on a few pounds, with the expectation you'd address it. This wasn't kindness, certainly, but it created social pressure toward maintaining weight within certain ranges. The body positivity movement and size acceptance advocacy that would later challenge these standards didn't yet exist. Weight was an unquestioned personal responsibility. Fashion reinforced these expectations brutally. Clothing came in limited size ranges with nothing comparable to modern plus-size options. If you gained significant weight, you often couldn't find clothes that fit plus-size options. If you gained significant weight, you often couldn't find clothes that fit, rather than stores stocking larger sizes. Tailors could let out seams only so far. This created a practical feedback loop where gaining weight meant wardrobe difficulties, providing concrete motivation to maintain relatively stable weights. You couldn't simply buy new clothes in bigger sizes and continue on. Physical reality imposed limits. Television and media featured almost exclusively slim actors, presenters, and models. Representation of diverse body types barely existed. Advertising showed idealized families with parents and children, all matching a narrow physical template. While damaging in many ways, this cultural uniformity created clear expectations about normal body size. The message was consistent, omnipresent, and largely unchallenged. Being overweight represented personal failure, demanding correction. Modern viewers watching 1970s television notice this immediately. Everyone looks thin by contemporary standards, not because they possessed superior genetics or willpower, but because the environment supported thinness as default. Food represented a dramatically larger percentage of household spending in 1970, typically 20 to 25%, compared to 10 to 12% today. With tighter budgets, families couldn't afford waste or excess. You bought what you needed, planned meals carefully, and ate everything purchased. Throwing away food meant literally throwing away money in ways that hurt household finances immediately. This encouraged appropriate portions rather than oversized servings that might end up in the trash. Eating out was genuinely expensive relative to incomes, making it a monthly or even less frequent occurrence for most families. A restaurant meal might cost what someone earned in half a day's work, making every such occasion memorable and special. The fast food that did exist hadn't yet discovered the value meal, or aggressive pricing strategies that would later make it comparable to cooking at home. McDonald's positioned itself as family entertainment, not daily convenience. The economics pushed people toward home cooking. Supermarkets didn't yet employ the sophisticated loss leader pricing and psychological manipulation that characterizes modern grocery retail. Products cost what they cost, without the endless promotions, BOGOs, and impulse buy placement designed to increase consumption. The economic environment naturally limited consumption because overconsumption meant less money for other needs. And in 1970, households operated on tighter margins with less consumer debt and greater financial insecurity, making overspending on food genuinely risky. The slimness of 1970s Americans wasn't about superior willpower or moral virtue. It reflected a completely different food environment and way of life that made maintaining healthy weight the path of least resistance. Walking to school, cooking from scratch, limited processed foods that weren't engineered for overconsumption, smaller portions that reflected actual appetite rather than perceived value. Minimal snacking between structured meals, manual labor that burned calories automatically, all combined to create calorie balance without conscious effort. Economic constraints reinforced these patterns. Food cost enough of household budgets that waste and excess hurt financially. Eating out was expensive enough to remain occasional. Convenience foods cost more than cooking, not less. Social pressure, while often cruel, created clear expectations. In the built environment, while becoming car-dependent, hadn't yet eliminated walking entirely from daily life, especially for children. None of this required thinking about calories, following diet plans, or exercising for fitness. The environment did the work automatically. The modern obesity epidemic doesn't represent personal failure or moral collapse. It shows how dramatically our food systems, built environment, and daily routines have transformed in just 50 years. We've engineered an environment where gaining weight is the path of least resistance, where every system and structure pushes toward overconsumption, and where fighting against it requires constant vigilance and effort. The 1970s didn't have gyms on every corner, because people didn't need them. The world itself enforced calorie balance through 1,000 small environmental factors that have all been systematically eliminated or reversed. We can't go back. But maybe we can stop pretending this is normal. Maybe we can stop blaming individuals for succumbing to an environment deliberately designed to maximize food consumption, regardless of health consequences. Because when you change the environment, you change the people, whether they want to or not.
Jesus goddamn fucking Christ. Jesus fucking Christ. Jesus fucking goddamn fucking.
A Radio Canada in
Fear is your greatest enemy in life.
In 1980, Rick Warren showed up in California with nothing but a Bible and a dream.
God
40 years later, he built a 30,000-member megachurch, baptized 56,000 people, trained 400,000 pastors worldwide, sold 50 million books. Then one vote changed everything. 9,437 to 1,212. His empire was over.
God,
but here's the thing. There was no scandal, no affair, no financial fraud. So what really happened? Weeks after arriving in Orange County, Rick Warren did something strange. He grabbed a clipboard, knocked on doors, and asked strangers one simple question. Why don't you go to church? The answer surprised him. People weren't angry at God. They were bored. They found church irrelevant, too traditional, too stuffy, too disconnected from real life. So Warren made a radical choice. He wouldn't build a church for church people.
Oh, she's got the
he would
spit
build
arms
it for
again.
people who hated church.
Smell.
He created a profile,
Warren,
called it Saddleback Sam. Sam was a busy professional, skeptical of religion, stressed about money and marriage, looking for answers, not lectures. Every decision at Saddleback filtered through one question. Would Sam like this? The parking lot, the music, the sermon topics, all designed for Sam. Their first public service? Easter Sunday, 1980, a high school theater. 205 people showed up. Most had never stepped inside a church before. Warren's formula was working,
I can do that
but here's the problem with building a church around what people want. Eventually, you have to decide what you actually believe. The growth was unlike anything American Christianity had seen. Within a decade, hundreds became thousands. Thousands became tens of thousands. Saddleback exploded across Southern California, then across the world. Berlin, Buenos Aires, Hong Kong. The numbers were staggering. 30,000 weekly attendees, 56,000 baptisms, over $1 billion donated to causes worldwide. But Warren wasn't just building a church, he was building a movement. In 2002, he released The Purpose-Driven Life. It sold 50 million copies, got translated into 137 languages. Churches everywhere launched 40-day campaigns based on his book. Then came the training. More than 400,000 pastors learned Warren's methods. His blueprint for growth spread to 162 countries. Warren became more than a pastor. He became a brand. In 2009, he stood on the steps of the U.S. Capitol. Millions watched as he delivered the prayer at Barack Obama's inauguration. Magazines called him America's pastor. He had power, influence, access to presidents and world leaders, and he gave away 90% of his book royalties, reversed his salary to pay back the church. He seemed untouchable. But behind the scenes, critics were circling. They said Warren had made a deal with the devil. Not literally, but something almost as dangerous. He had traded doctrine for popularity. The attacks started early, and they came from Warren's own tribe. In 2007, theologian Michael Horton appeared on CBS's 60 Minutes. He didn't hold back, called Warren's message heresy, said he was swapping the gospel for self-help therapy. John MacArthur, one of America's most respected pastors, wrote that the seeker-friendly model was fundamentally incompatible with the Bible. Their argument? Simple. When you design church around what people want, you stop preaching what people need. Warren's sermons focused on stress, marriage, finding your purpose. Critics said he was avoiding the hard stuff, sin, repentance, the cross. They pointed to Warren's mentor, Robert Schuller, the positive-thinking preacher whose own empire crumbled into bankruptcy. Was Saddleback heading down the same road? Warren brushed off the criticism. The numbers spoke for themselves. Lives were being changed. People were getting baptized. Why fix what wasn't broken? But then something happened that no amount of strategy could prepare him for. His world fell apart. And this time it wasn't about theology. April 5th, 2013. Rick Warren's youngest son, Matthew, took his own life. He was 27 years old. Matthew had battled severe depression for years. The Warrens tried everything. The best doctors, the best counselors, endless prayers. Nothing worked. Rick described the pain as unrelenting. The scheduled sermon that weekend was called Surviving Tough Times. Warren never preached it. Instead, he disappeared. For 4 months, Rick Warren stepped away from the pulpit. He spent hours alone each day, grieving, praying, crying. In interviews, he was brutally honest. I cried every single day since Matthew died. Kay Warren said it plainly. We are not the same people we were before. But something shifted during that grief. The Warrens started speaking since Matthew died. Kay Warren said it plainly. We are not the same people we were before. But something shifted during that grief. The Warrens started speaking about mental health, called it the last taboo in churches. They launched conferences, invited pastors and counselors to address the stigma. Some saw a broken father turning pain into purpose. Others saw a man losing his edge, softening, changing. And that change would soon lead to a decision that shocked everyone. A decision made on Mother's Day. One that would cost Warren his denomination and his legacy. May 2021. Mother's Day. Saddleback Church made an announcement. They had ordained 3 women as pastors. Liz Puffer, Cynthia Petty, Katie Edwards. Rick Warren didn't hide from this. Saddleback Church made an announcement. They had ordained 3 women as pastors. Liz Puffer, Cynthia Petty, Katie Edwards. Rick Warren didn't hide from it. He called it deliberate obedience to Scripture. But the Southern Baptist Convention saw it differently. The SBC's official statement is clear. The office of pastor is limited to men. Period. For 42 years, Saddleback had been part of the SBC. They had given millions, trained thousands, shaped the denomination's growth. None of that mattered now. The Credentials Committee launched an investigation. By February 2023, they ruled Saddleback was no longer in friendly cooperation. Warren, now retired, appealed directly. He flew to New Orleans, stood before 13,000 delegates. His plea was emotional. I am not asking you to agree with my church. I am asking you to act like a Southern Baptist.
Isn't this the same motherfucker that banned
the final vote, 9,437 to expel.
Her husband was beating the hell out of her.
1,212 to keep Saddleback in. That's 88.46%. Nearly 9 out of 10 voted against Warren. The denomination he helped build had just kicked him out. But here's what most people missed. The vote wasn't really about women pastors. It was about something bigger, something that had been brewing for decades. The SBC was drawing a line, and Saddleback was on the wrong side of it. So where does that leave the church now? The answer might surprise you. September 2022. Rick Warren officially retired. His replacement? Andy Wood, and Andy's wife, Stacy. Stacy became the church's teaching pastor, the exact role that got Saddleback expelled. When reporters asked if she would step down after the SBC vote, her answer was clear. No. Andy backed her up, said his wife has the spiritual gift of teaching, joked that people often tell him she's a better preacher than he is. Saddleback released a statement, said they were grateful and that their best days are ahead. But critics saw something familiar. A new charismatic leader, power concentrated in one couple, boundaries being redrawn. Sound familiar? Hillsong. Brian Houston built a global empire. It collapsed under scandal. Mars Hill? Mark Driscoll's church imploded after abuse allegations. Willow Creek? Bill Hybels resigned in disgrace. Gateway, Robert Morris just stepped down amid controversy. Different churches, different scandals,
you suck my
same pattern.
Dick, bitch.
Charismatic founder, rapid growth, centralized power, then collapse. Saddleback doesn't have a scandal, but it fits the pattern in every other way. The question isn't whether megachurches can survive. The question is whether they should exist at all. Right now, over 400,000 pastors are using Rick Warren's blueprint. Churches in 162 countries follow his methods. His books sit on shelves in millions of homes. But here's the uncomfortable truth. The model that built Saddleback, it's the same model that critics warned about for decades. Survey people, give them what they want, measure success by attendance.
Bitch, you suck
it works
my motherfucking
until
dick.
it doesn't.
Bitch, you suck
Warren
my
built an
motherfucking
empire
dick,
by
bitch.
asking one question. What do people want? Maybe he should have asked a different one. What will we not compromise? Because here's the pattern nobody talks about.
Dick,
every megachurch that collapsed started the same way. With growth, with influence, with a leader everyone trusted. The fall never comes when you expect it. Saddleback is still standing, for now. But so was Hillsong, so was Mars Hill, so was Willow Creek. The real question is, what happens when your church follows the same playbook?
You suck my dick, bitch. You suck my motherfucking dick. Suck my motherfucking dick, bitch. God damn it. Suck my dick, bitch. You suck my fucking dick. Suck my motherfucking... You suck my dick, bitch. Suck my dick. You suck my fucking dick. Suck my fucking dick. You suck my motherfucking dick. You suck my fucking dick. Suck my dick, bitch. You suck my motherfucking dick, bitch. Suck my fucking dick.
This story contains approximately 2,100 words, 50 million copies sold, 20,000 weekly attendees, 400,000 pastors trained worldwide.
Suck my dick,
Rick
bitch.
Warren spent 42 years building Saddleback Church from 7 people in a living room to one of the largest congregations in America. He delivered the invocation at President Obama's inauguration.
Dick,
Time magazine named him one of the most influential people in the world. Then on June 14th, 2023 in New Orleans, the Southern Baptist Convention voted 9,437 to 1,212 to expel his church forever. 42 years of work, undone in a single afternoon. The man who wrote The Purpose-Driven Life was now watching his life's purpose come apart at the seams. It started in January 1980 in Orange County, California. Rick Warren and his wife Kay arrived with a dream and no money.
God fucking damn it.
They held their first Bible study with 7 people in their condominium. On Easter Sunday, 1980, Warren held Saddleback's first public service at Laguna Hills High School Theater. 200 people showed up, remarkable for a church with no building, no reputation, and no track record. The growth was explosive. The church used nearly 80 different facilities over its first 35 years, constantly outgrowing each space. By 1995, Saddleback had 10,000 members. Warren published The Purpose-Driven Church that year, sharing the principles behind the growth. The book became a bestseller, translated into over 30 languages. By the early 2000s, Saddleback averaged nearly 20,000 in weekly attendance, making it one of the 10 largest churches in America. Then came the book that changed everything. In 2002, Warren released The Purpose-Driven Life. What on earth am I here for?
Dick, bitch.
Within 6 years, it sold 25 million copies. By 2023, sales exceeded 50 million, making it one of the best-selling nonfiction books in history, second only to the Bible among Christian titles. More than 30,000 churches participated in the 40 Days of Purpose campaign. Warren's influence was no longer just denominational, it was global. The prosperity followed. Warren appeared on major networks. He hosted presidential candidates at Saddleback, including Barack Obama and John McCain in 2008. He delivered the invocation at Obama's inauguration in January 2009, a controversial choice that put him at the center of national conversation. Christianity Today called him America's most influential pastor. Forbes listed him among the world's most powerful celebrities. The purpose-driven network connected pastors in over 160 countries. Warren claimed he had trained 400,000 church leaders worldwide. But the cameras never captured what was happening at home. On April 5th, 2013, Rick Warren's youngest son Matthew died by suicide. He was 27 years old. He had struggled with mental illness since childhood, depression so severe that Warren later recalled his son asking years earlier, "Dad, I know I'm going to heaven. Why can't I just die and end this pain?" Warren sent an email to his congregation the next day. "No words can express the anguished grief we feel right now," he wrote. "Only those closest knew that he struggled from birth with mental illness, dark holes of depression, and even suicidal thoughts. In spite of America's best doctors, meds, counselors, and prayers for healing, the torture of mental illness never subsided. Warren didn't preach for 4 months. More than 10,000 people wrote letters of condolence. The man who had taught millions how to find purpose was now searching for his own. When Matthew died, Warren later said, "I didn't just grieve his death, I grieved his life, watching a child for 27 years say, 'Why can't I be normal?'" The personal tragedy transformed Warren's ministry. He launched mental health initiatives, partnered with the Catholic Diocese of Orange County and the National Alliance on Mental Illness. He became an advocate, trying to remove the stigma surrounding depression. "If my heart doesn't work and I take a pill, nobody thinks anything of it," Warren said. "But if my brain doesn't work and I take a pill, why am I supposed to hide that?" But even as Warren rebuilt his life, a different kind of crisis was approaching, and this one would cost him his denomination. On Mother's Day weekend 2021, Saddleback Church ordained 3 women as pastors. The ceremony drew immediate criticism from Southern Baptist leaders. The SBC's Statement of Faith, the Baptist Faith and Message, explicitly states that the office of pastor is limited to men as qualified by Scripture. Warren knew the rules. He had been Southern Baptist his entire life, 4th generation. His great-grandfather had been sent to America by Charles Spurgeon himself. But Warren had come to believe the denomination was wrong on this issue. "I wanted to speak up for millions of Southern Baptist women," he later said. "I believe their spiritual gifts, their leadership gifts and talents, are being wasted." In September 2022, Warren retired after 42 years. He handed the church to Andy Wood, whose wife Stacy became a teaching pastor. The title was enough to trigger a formal review. On February 21st, 2023, the SBC's Executive Committee voted to expel Saddleback Church. The terminology was clinical, deemed not in friendly cooperation with the convention. Translation: the second largest congregation in the denomination was out. Warren appealed. He launched a campaign, dozens of tweets, a website, 3 videos, an open letter, a 4-page guide for messengers.
Now buck up and overlook.
He argued that expelling Saddleback violated the Baptist principle of church autonomy. "I'm not asking you to agree with my church," he told the convention in New Orleans. "I am asking you to act like a Southern Baptist." The messengers weren't moved. On June 14, 2023, approximately 13,000 Southern Baptist delegates cast their votes. The result, 9,437 to uphold the expulsion, 1,212 to restore fellowship. 88% voted against Rick Warren's appeal. Albert Mohler, president of Southern Baptist Theological Seminary, spoke for the denomination. "The issue of a woman serving in the pastorate is an issue of fundamental biblical authority that does violate both the doctrine and the order of the Southern Baptist Convention."
You suck my dick, bitch.
Warren held a press conference afterward. He wasn't surprised by the outcome. "I wanted to push the conversation that's been stagnant for years," he said. And then he added a prediction. "The next generation of Southern Baptists will remove the restriction on women one day because truth eventually triumphs over tradition." The irony was not lost on observers. Rick Warren, the man who had been too conservative for many progressives, who had opposed same-sex marriage, who had been criticized for his views on sexuality, was now being expelled for being too liberal. The evangelical center had shifted, and Warren found himself on the wrong side of the line he had helped draw. The megachurch model that Warren helped pioneer carries specific vulnerabilities. These institutions depend on charismatic founders. They build infrastructure that demands constant crowds. The economics work only at scale. Hartford Institute data shows that megachurches require massive attendance to sustain their operations. The production quality, the multiple campuses, the staff of hundreds. When founders leave, the model often fractures. Mars Hill Church collapsed after Mark Driscoll's departure. Willow Creek suffered after Bill Hybels. Hillsong fragmented after scandals involving multiple leaders. The personality cult that builds these institutions becomes the vulnerability that breaks them. Gallup polling shows American church attendance declining from 42% in 2000 to approximately 30% by 2023. Church membership dropped below 50% of the population for the first time in Gallup's 80-year tracking history. The audience for these institutions is shrinking. The founders who built them are aging. The successors struggle to maintain what was built. Saddleback still operates. It still draws thousands weekly across multiple campuses in Southern California and international locations in Hong Kong, Germany, the Philippines, and Argentina. Andy Wood still preaches. Stacy Wood still teaches. The church simply does so outside the Southern Baptist Convention. But something has changed. Warren is no longer the head of a Southern Baptist megachurch. He's the founder of an independent congregation that was expelled by his own denomination. The man who gave the invocation at a presidential inauguration is now a retired pastor whose theological views were formally rejected by the largest Protestant denomination in America. Warren practices what he calls reverse tithing, donating 90% of his income and living on 10%. In 2003, after the purpose-driven life became a phenomenon, he stopped taking a salary from Saddleback and repaid the church for the previous 23 years of compensation. He pledged the book royalties to charity. The financial accusations that follow other megachurch leaders don't attach to Warren the same way, but the denominational rejection stings differently. This wasn't about money, it wasn't about scandal, it was about theology, about who gets to speak from the pulpit, about whose gifts are recognized, about what the Bible actually requires. Warren believed he was on the right side of history. The Southern Baptist Convention believed he had crossed a line. 50 million copies of The Purpose-Driven Life are still in circulation. 400,000 pastors still use his training materials. Saddleback still fills its seats. But the denomination Warren spent 42 years serving decided his church was no longer welcome at the table. The Purpose-Driven Life asks, "What on earth am I here for?" Rick Warren spent 4 decades answering that question for millions of people. Now, at the end of his pastoral career, the question has turned back on him. What happens when the institution you built rejects the direction you've taken? What happens when your purpose and your denomination's purpose diverge? Warren once wrote that every church is driven by something: tradition, finances, programs, personalities. He argued churches should be driven by purpose instead. But purposes, it turns out, can conflict, and when they do, someone has to leave. On June 14th, 2023, Rick Warren left. Not by choice, by a vote of 9,437 to 1,212. Some legacies aren't inherited. Some are dismantled by the very people who were supposed to carry them forward. Share your thoughts below.
Mart! You suck my motherfucking dick. You suck my motherfucking dick. I fucked his. Ho! You suck my... I fucked his. Ho! You suck my motherfucking dick, bitch. God damn it. Suck my motherfucking dick. You suck my goddamn dick. God damn it. God fucking damn it. God fuck it. Suck my dick, bitch. You suck my motherfucking dick. You suck my dick, bitch. Suck my motherfucking dick, bitch. You suck my motherfucking dick. You suck my motherfucking dick. She looks evil. Blonde cunt. Suck my dick, bitch. You suck my motherfucking dick. Suck my motherfucking
Chapter 2.
Dick, bitch. You suck my
are not
dick.
An accident.
Suck.
I can tell this is going to be a long one
suck
because
my
I started
dick,
to
bitch.
run out of red ink when making my notes on the pages. You are not an accident. Your birth was no mistake or mishap, and your life is no fluke. My parents were already separated and considering divorce when I was conceived. I'm an accident.
Suck my
I know
motherfucking
this.
dick, bitch.
Your parents may not have planned you, but God did. Because apparently, God's plan overrides free will. Okay. Prescribed every single detail of your body. So, if you have cystic fibrosis, Tay-Sachs disease, or Town syndrome, God prescribed it. If you have a genetic tendency towards depression, psychosis, paranoia, cancer, God prescribed it. It's all part of God's plan. He custom made your body just the way he wanted it, without violating the laws of genetics or heredity in any way, shape, or form. It's not like God spontaneously created you. Oh no, your parents fucked, and now you're here. He then takes a common anti-choice quote from Isaiah, though he doesn't actually write the citation. It's very interesting. He just, puts an italicized Bible quote in there,
Suck
and of course it's
my
usually
dick,
from the
bitch.
Message or one of the other paraphrase versions of the Bible, and then he just puts a little number at the end, so you have to look it up in the index, because actually telling Christians where in the Bible you're getting this might allow them to verify. Let's see. So he uses, "You saw me before I was born and scheduled each day of my life before I began to breathe. Every day
Suck
was
my
recorded
dick,
in your
bitch.
book," which is about a specific prophecy about a specific guy. Anti-choice people love using
Stupid!
womb and all that, but it's God talking about
I was thinking about that also.
specific prophet. There's nothing about it. It's all about this guy being so special. Whereas anti-choice people want to take that same argument and then say that God has planned all babies to this degree. And it's just not, there's no scriptural backing for the anti-choice position. God decided how you would be born.
God damn it.
My grandmother was a spiritual midwife who delivered babies. Like me, I was born on the living room floor while a potted plant melted in the room, filling it with toxic fumes. Yes, I'm aware of how funny that is. What's not funny is that my grandmother also delivered my friend Larry's son 29 years ago. His mother needed to go to the hospital. She needed medical care and he needed to be in the NICU, but my grandmother didn't take them. According to Rick Warren, God planned for Larry's son to be born in a way that it would render him mentally retarded and incapable for caring for himself for the rest of his life. He's a couple years older than I am, and he lives in a group home, and always will. But apparently, that's all part of God's plan. It doesn't matter whether your parents were good, bad, or indifferent. God knew those two individuals possessed the right genetic makeup to create the custom you he had in mind. So I guess God really, really wanted me to have OCD and arthritis and all the physical ailments that I do have from being a genetic makeup of my parents who both had genetic problems. Oh, I'm also a carrier for cystic fibrosis, which I get through my genes. That was apparently part of God's plan too. Free will, not a factor in any way. And it doesn't matter if your parents beat the ever-loving shit out of you and tortured you and brainwashed you, locked you up, or any of the things that parents do. It was all part of God's plan for you to be tortured for the first 18 years of your life. God never does anything accidentally, and he never makes mistakes.
You can see this pain and rage in her voice against God.
Rape babies. Okay, he doesn't have that part, but come on. Okay. Oh, God is not haphazard. He planned it all with great precision, including the Holocaust, the killing fields of Rwanda. Apparently, it is all planned with great precision. Again, if God does have that kind of level of influence and detail and control over our lives, he's a monster. The cosmos is specially designed, whole with life and mankind as its fundamental goal. Okay, that's not what science says, but it's nice that you found a guy who got a science degree that he uses to wipe his ass with that you could quote. Gee, Rick, the intellectual dishonesty astounds me to new depths every fucking day I read. He created the universe for us. So fucking conceited and not in keeping with reality. Our universe is massive. Massive. Multiple thousands upon thousands of galaxies in our universe. And you think it was put here for one species that would evolve for one brief era of time on one insignificant planet circling one star? Do you seriously think that all of this was for you? And you want to think that atheists are conceited because we don't bow down to a god? Shiny Mirror Award. Here you go. God's kind of love is difficult to fathom. Shiny Mirror Award. Here you go. God's kind of love is difficult to fathom, but fundamentally reliable. In what meaningful way is God's love reliable? I mean, when I think of someone that I love, one of the primary impulses that I feel is a desire to protect them. If Rick Warren's God really exists and is as described, he doesn't give a shit about us at all. He's an accomplice to every single rape. God is an accomplice because he doesn't try to protect those he loves. Or, he's made up bullshit. The Bible says, I've carried you since you were born. I've taken care of you from your birth. Even when you are old, I will be the same. Even when your hair has turned gray, I will take care of you. I made you and will take care of you. Which sounds nice, except he doesn't. Today, thousands of children will starve to death. Rick Warren's God will fail every one of them. Only you and I can do anything to help. I'm going to put a few links to a couple of charities I support, Save the Children and My Charity Water, to the side, and ask you, if possible, to donate today. Because it's not like God is taking care of these people. Either he doesn't exist or he doesn't care. Oh, here was some ego that just cracked me up. Rick Warren says, if there was no God, you could stop reading this book because life would have no purpose or meaning or significance. As if life having meaning or significance has anything to do with Rick Warren's book. Conceited! Oh, the ego on this man. It's not quite as bad as my cult-leading grandmother's, but I've only gotten into the second chapter, so it might be. Oh, okay, so if there's no God, he says there would be no right or wrong and no hope beyond your brief years here on Earth. Look, Ricky, I don't need a God to threaten me to behave decently. It sickens me that you do. And it still doesn't work. Oh, we discover meaning and purpose only when we make God the reference point of our lives. Because, of course, your purpose isn't about you. It's about God. Otherwise, look at yourself probably would be the right approach. Okay, YouTube, let me just close it up. For day 2, the point to ponder. I am not an accident. Despite all those facts I know to the contrary. Verse to remember. I am your creator, you were in my care even before you were born. Isaiah 44:2. Some version. Question to consider. I know that God uniquely created me. That's not a question, that's a claim. What areas of my personality, background, and physical appearance am I struggling to accept? Ricky, I'm not struggling to accept myself anymore. Since I put away childish things and left my faith behind, I have more faith in myself and more capacity to handle my own life than I would have imagined as a self-loathing child of God. Alright, take ownership for yourselves. Take ownership for your own future. You determine your destiny through your actions, choices, and the way you treat people. Everybody on YouTube, have great and godless days. Peace. Usually, we deny our weaknesses, defend them, excuse them, hide them, and resent them. Well, that's a very long, complicated list of contradictory things that we usually do. This prevents God from using them, your weaknesses and limitations that He gave you, the way He desires. Oh, look, when you don't kiss God's ass through the troubles that, according to Rick, He planned for you before your birth, every bad thing that would ever happen in the whole world. And the problem is that you're blocking Him from using the weaknesses He gave you the way He wants to, make Him look good. Whereas, miraculously restoring limbs, something that might actually make Him look good, yeah, He's not interested in that. It's more about the attitude of the people He names. God says, my thoughts and my ways are higher than yours, so He often acts in ways that are the exact opposite of what we expect. only if we expect him to be loving. If we expect him to be a douche, then there's no conflict. There's nothing opposite about it. Here comes the Calvinism. Your weaknesses are not an accident. God deliberately allowed them in your life for the purpose of demonstrating his power through you. God gave me mental illnesses so he could show off? God has never been impressed with strength or self-sufficiency. Well, of course not. He created us to be a race of slaves, didn't he? He wants us to be dependent and needy so that he can enjoy saying no to those needs. A weakness is not a sin or a vice or a character defect that you can change, such as overeating or impatience. Can change, but choose not to, right, Rick? A weakness is any limitation that you choose, such as overeating or impatience. Can change, but choose not to, right, Rick? A weakness is any limitation that you inherited or have no power to change. It may be a physical limitation, like a handicap, a chronic illness, naturally low energy, or disability, which is somehow not a handicap. It may be an emotional limitation, such as a trauma scar, a hurtful memory, a personality quirk, or a hereditary disposition.
I
mental illness? Or it may be a talent
just
or
in the
intellectual
nick of time.
limitation. We're not all super bright or talented. Well, Rick, you're not. Okay, so keep in mind, Rick Warren's all-loving, all-powerful God with the eternal long-term plan picked every physical limitation, every handicap, chronic illness, disability, psychological scar, trauma, hurtful memory, and any limitations on your talent or intellect. Yep, God picked those for you because he's all-loving and needs you to depend on him to get his ego blowjob. When you think of the limitation in your life, you may be tempted to conclude, God could never use me. Whereas I'm tempted to conclude, wow, God's a douche. He's either a jerk or fictional. The all-loving God, in the presence of all this pain that apparently he picked, is logically impossible. He enjoys putting his great power into ordinary containers. God will use us if we allow him to work through our weaknesses. Yeah, and so will that skeezy guy from the bar. That doesn't mean you should let him use you. So, in order for God to use you, something that Rick keeps thinking is desirable and I have yet to agree with, first you must admit your weaknesses. Take the time to identify your personal weaknesses. You might make a list
I'm not good
of them.
looking.
Oh look, it's step 4 again. Hi, 12-step call. We're only human. If it takes a crisis to get you to admit this, God won't hesitate to allow it. Because he loves you. That's not love. That's abuse.
Does she have a spitty face? Nah, she doesn't look good enough to have a spitty face on him.
And love.
She looks like a hag, a witch, a young hag.
Same. In fact,
I did not accept her having a spitty face on.
One sign of love is an absence of abuse. The presence of abuse pretty much nullifies the existence of love.
She's kind of ugly.
Ironically enough, I was reading the chapter notes yesterday while I wasn't making a video because I was at the Social Security office trying to get help with my disability, my crippling social anxiety that I suppose I should just be content with. A scenario that makes it almost impossible for me to be in a public space without having a panic attack. Yes, I should just be content because, you know, God is going to use me. And that makes it okay.
Oh, she's cute. Not Angie the entity. It's this girl right here.
The goodness of God. It says, God, I believe you love me and know what's best for me. Because I haven't read the book of Job yet! What the fuck, Christians? Read your Bible. Your God is not loving. He does not care what's best for you. If you don't impregnate the right lady, he'll smite you down. Own much. Christians, you do not worship a merciful God. If he is real as described in the Bible, you are just as surely about to get fucked for all eternity in hell as I am. None of you follow the book. You should be content with your
How many of these comments are true faith comments? Are they just ironically putting up comments that are opposite what they mean, so they can laugh behind my back, or do they really mean this?
Dependent on them in some way, socially, financially, and then they abuse you because you're fucking stuck, because you're depending on them. Which is why living your life that way is a bad idea.
There's no way in hell.
Oh, look.
And look at everybody who's calling me good looking is a fucking guy.
Cerebral palsy and Tay-Sachs disease and cystic fibrosis. It's all to keep our egos in check. But, you know, not like Rick Warren's ego. A limitation can act as a governor to keep us from going too fast and running ahead of God. Because God has a maximum speed limit. Our weaknesses also encourage fellowship between believers. And as any ex-Christian knows, that's really not such a great thing. Look, my weaknesses are due to emotional and psychological trauma caused by believers. So there goes your theory shot all to hell. Your greatest life messages and your most effective ministry will come out of your deepest hurts. Because God wants you to help other people. Because that would save him the effort of doing it himself. And even though it's possible for you to grow your spiritual muscle through volunteering at the church, apparently God has more fun doing it through hurts, scars, emotional traumas, deeply painful experiences, illnesses, death of a loved one. All those things that Ricky listed before that are part of the blessed life of being a Christian. There are no advantages that Rick is offering. None. There's no reason to do what Rick is saying. Nothing about your life will actually improve. This is terrible advice, terrible theology, and how the fuck did he sell 50 million copies? Damn it, I need to sell more than 50 million copies of this DVD is what I need to do. You need to honestly share your weaknesses. The more you let down your guard, terrible theology, and how the fuck did he sell 50 million copies? Advice, terrible theology, and how the fuck did he sell 50 million copies? Damn it, I need to sell more than 50 million copies of this DVD is what I need to do. You need to honestly share your weaknesses. The more you let down your guard, take off your mask, and share your struggles, the more God will be able to use you in serving others. Well then, Ricky, how come you haven't shared any of your struggles with us, besides the ones we can obviously see by looking at you, like hypocrisy? Vulnerability is emotionally liberating. Opening up relieves stress, diffuses your fears, and is the first step to freedom. I actually agree. When people see God using you in spite of your weaknesses, it encourages them to think, maybe God can use me. Yes, because being used is what every person wants, unless they have a self-esteem. The most essential quality for leadership is not perfection, but credibility. Rick Warren thinks he has credibility!
She reminds me of our cousin
Glory in your weaknesses.
When Kimberly wilded out.
When Satan points out your weaknesses, agree with him. And fill your heart with praise for Jesus, who understands every weakness of ours. Oh, I'm guessing he doesn't understand endometriosis. And for the Holy Spirit, who helps us in our weakness, but doesn't, remove it. He next goes into the story from the Bible of Jacob wrestling with God and God dislocating his hip. A story that I have a long-standing personal hatred for. As many of you know, I spent all of high school walking with a dislocated hip, using a cane, and having no medical care, thanks to my family's faith-healing Christian beliefs. One night Jacob wrestled with God and said, I'm not letting go until you bless me. Because I love how God's physical and corporeal in this story. God said, alright, but then he grabbed Jacob's thigh and dislocated his hip. From that day forward, Jacob walked with a limp so he could never run away again. Yes, because God's such a loving, abusive husband, he'll fucking break your legs to keep you from leaving.